A couple of years ago, I joined JDate, set up a profile, added a couple of pictures, and noted a couple of my interests, as you're meant to do. I started chatting to a couple of guys on there who seemed interesting, and then I was messaged by David. David seemed sweet, reasonably witty, decent banter, liked the West Wing. What wasn't to like? We exchanged numbers and agreed to meet the following week at a pub down the road. Success, my first J-date. I should at this point mention that although I don't really remember exactly how the conversation turned to this, I must have mentioned that I liked the Muppets. And I do like the Muppets. Again, what's not to like? But it was a throwaway comment, and I obviously did not think much of it at the time. How wrong I was. We met the following week. I was full of excitement, and he had brought along a duffel bag. There was no spark at all. The witty banter I had come to expect from him was just not there. He was nervous, fidgety, and told me once I'd ordered a glass of wine that if I died on the road that night because of my drinking, that he would not feel guilty. Stuck for something non-awkward to say, I asked him why he'd brought along a giant duffel bag. His eyes lit up and mumbled something about how he'd hoped to save them for later in the evening to spice it up, but since I'd asked, he unzipped the bag and from within pulled out Kermit. A full-sized, proper, hardcore Kermit the Muppet. He put Kermit on his knee and started to do what I believe was his Kermit impression. Believe me, it was not Kermit, but someone sounding exceptionally constipated. I like to think of myself as reasonably nice, polite, Northwest London Jewish girl, but even I couldn't see a way out of this. He told me he had 40 other Muppets at home, and that since I'd told him that I also loved the Muppets, we were obviously meant to be. Obviously, we were not. I made my excuses, downed my glass, and headed for the door. He still messages me to this day, and if I ever see him around, unfortunately the Jewish social scene in London is smaller than I would like, I tell him I have a boyfriend.
I had an OkCupid account for a few years. I would occasionally get on there and message people or check and see if I had any messages. One day, this decent enough looking girl messaged me and we started talking. It was just the usual get to know you kind of stuff, like what do you do for a living and what are your hobbies. I told the girl that I worked night shifts at the local Walmart, and at the time it didn't seem that giving her this kind of info would backfire in any way, but I was wrong. We continued messaging each other for a few days, getting to know each other. She was a school teacher and was a bit older than me. Being that I had a minimum wage job, I didn't really see much of a future between us, and our conversations were growing a bit stale. So me, being the asshole I am, decided the best course of action would be just to stop talking to her completely, instead of telling her I wasn't interested. A few days go by, and she messaged me a few times, but I did not reply. Then I started to get messages that were a bit hostile, asking me why I wasn't talking to her and why I didn't want to be her friend and things like that. So I decided to continue ignoring her like the good person that I am. A few more days go by, and then one night at about 2 a.m., while I'm working, a coworker comes up to me and says that some girl was asking for me. At the time I didn't put two and two together, so I just shrugged it off. Then the following few work nights, my coworker keeps telling me that this girl is coming in looking for me. I finally remember that I had told this girl where I work at. Then, the next night she finds me. She had come in with a guy and confronted me about ignoring her on OkCupid. She wasn't being hostile or anything when she asked, so I just told her that I had been busy and hadn't been on in a while. So, awkwardly, she said, "Well, okay, just message me when you get home." At this point I was a bit freaked out, but I stuck to my ways and did not message her, hoping that she would just leave me alone. But of course, this only made matters worse. She started showing up looking for me on my days off, asking my coworkers what my schedule was. The next time I had work, she was there at around 3 a.m., again with a random guy that was different than the last, and again asking me why I did not message her. But this time she was a bit more hostile, saying, "What kind of person does this to someone?" and things like that. But I told her the same thing again, that I had been busy and had not gotten on the website in a while, and then as always, I continued to ignore her messages. After a few times of hearing that she had shown up looking for me again, and me being afraid of getting stabbed to death by this crazy chick in the parking lot, it finally stopped. She stopped coming to my job and stopped messaging me. In the end, all my hard work and perseverance paid off, and she moved on to stalking someone new.
I've known a girl, who we'll call Molly, since we were young. I know her immediate family very well. We grew up and drifted apart, but stayed friends on Facebook. Flash forward to last year, when I was a college student. I received several messages from a cute lady on OkCupid, and I was psyched, until I saw there was a steep language barrier, and she was looking for women to have sex with, while her husband watched, which is not my bag. They were all about a subservient master-slave type relationship, with the big strong man dominating the little women. Her entire profile was, "My master this and my master that." He was this remarkably jacked, bald, white 40-something, and she was a slender, pretty Asian 20-something, who had met him while he was stationed overseas. Her pictures didn't show full frontal, but they basically came as close to all-out porn as she could, without breaking the rules. Mostly in costumes, obviously meant to play on her heritage, and all of it about coy sexual captions on how her master likes her holes. I glanced at Master's profile and saw his thoughts on feminism. The only time he gets in touch with his feminine side is to give it a firm spanking like the dirty little slut that it is. Snorted and moved on. Or so I thought. This summer, I started flipping through photos of my old friend Molly that had been tagged on Facebook. I came across one in particular, and I stared at it for a while, because I couldn't figure out why the man, with his arm around her, looked so familiar. The caption said that Molly was his niece, and I eventually decided that it was pinging me strangely just because he looked like his brother, Molly's father, who was almost like a second dad to me when we were kids. Then, I clicked next on the album. It was a picture of the woman from the OkCupid Sexy Times pictures. I realized why Molly's uncle had looked so familiar. He was the proud anti-feminist who had wanted to get off on me having sex with his wife. So now, I'm in this weird place where I've seen mostly naked, very sexual pictures of my childhood friend's aunt, dressed up like a Vietnamese prostitute.
I met him on Match.com, which I joined as an attempt to tiptoe back into dating after a very painful divorce. He sent me a message saying my profile was intriguing and he would love a shot at meeting me. I looked over his profile and quickly denounced that we weren't a match. He had written a long, massive essay about his passion for football and annoyance with women who didn't understand, and he claimed to be a devoted Christian and a staunch conservative. I politely declined his request for a meeting, and this seemed to only egg him on. I'd say, "I don't meet any of your clearly articulated criteria," to which he'd reply, "Maybe you're worth opening my mind a bit." We went back and forth for a week or two, with me insisting we weren't right for each other, and him playfully arguing that I was too interesting for him to let me get away. He said he'd become accustomed to women throwing themselves at him, and he found my reluctance sexy and enduring. I'll admit, I was flattered by his persistence and impressed by his confidence, so I finally agreed to meet him at a restaurant for dinner. He was decent looking, although a big hoss of a fellow, and he came across as intelligent, witty, and confident in person. He said he was recently divorced and had a 3-year-old daughter. He seemed nice enough, but I really wasn't feeling a spark, and after a couple of hours, I began to find his self-assurance somewhat obnoxious. For reasons I still don't quite understand, I nevertheless agreed to join him for ice cream after our meal, and accepted his offer to drive. We live near the coast, and somehow he talked me into pulling into a parking lot near a public beach to chat and finish our ice cream. Although I didn't really think it would work out, I let him kiss me. When it got a little too hot and heavy, I stopped it and said I was ready to head back to the car. He started whining and begging me for sex, saying that I couldn't just leave him in turned on like that. At first I laughed it off, but he grew increasingly desperate, telling me he was about to explode.
Can't you just suck it or at least give me a hand job?
No, I said. I think it's time to go now. He got all frustrated and annoyed, like he was offended that I'd be willing to kiss but unwilling to fuck. And I started to get pretty nervous. That's when he whipped it out of his pants and proceeded to masturbate right there in the driver's seat. I was too relieved that this massive dude hadn't tried to rape me to feel scared, and I had to force myself to look away, trapped in a combination of absolute horror and fascination. He sat there stroking away enthusiastically, moaning about how good it felt, while I pressed against the passenger door, trying to stay as far away as possible and looking around for potential help in case things got any worse. When he was almost finished, he said in a breathless voice,
"Where do you want me to put it?"
When I didn't respond, he continued,
"Where should I come? Can I put it on your tits, or can you at least give me your hand?"
I ignored him, so he just let loose all over the steering wheel of his truck.
"Oh my God, I am so embarrassed,"
he said.
"I can't believe I just did that, but you are so sexy I couldn't help it."
Then he casually asked me to pass him a napkin from the glove box so he could clean up his mess. I probably should have just ran away, but the empty beach at night seemed more dangerous than this now spent perv, so I let him take me back to my car. He acted like nothing strange had happened and told me he had a great time. As soon as I saw my car, I ran without even looking back and went straight home. He actually sent me another message asking for another shot. I disabled my Match account and basically disappeared from the cyber universe for months. Technically, I think it probably qualified as some sort of sexual assault, but after telling the story of the master dater to my friends over and over, I had laughed too much to feel traumatized. A few months later, I was eating pancakes at IHOP with my new boyfriend, and I spotted the master dater eating with a woman and a 3-year-old little girl. Both of them were wearing wedding rings, and from the look of panic on his face when we briefly made eye contact, I feel pretty sure he was married the entire time we corresponded. After what I'd let him get away with, I was very tempted to go over and ask him if he's whacked off on any first dates lately. If only that kid hadn't been there. Hey guys, thank you all for watching, and if you like this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the Nightmare Army. I'm always looking for new soldiers in my Nightmare Nation. As always, thank you Blue Spooky for accompanying me on this collab video, and of course, if you haven't checked out Blue's channel yet, please do. The guy's awesome. Now, I feel like I should talk more about this subject since it is a serious matter, but guys and girls, please be careful of who you talk to online on these dating websites. I understand this might not be the case for some people just because there are some online dates that have actually worked, Like a couple of family members of mine, some friends of mine have used some of these dating websites, and they turned out pretty well. However, that's not always the case, so like I said, just be aware of who you're talking to, and never ignore the red flags. And just another update, I'm sorry these past videos have been a bit short. I promise to make longer videos very soon for you guys. It's just been a really crazy month with Valentine's Day and all that other crap. But, as always guys, thank you all for watching, and if you have a scary story you would like me to narrate, please send it in my email, and let me know if you want your name mentioned or not. And just remember guys, the best ideas always come out of nightmares.